Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of MoonLore with Jennie and Laurie. And today we are talking about the Libra Full Moon, which is happening on April 16th at 2:55 p.m. Eastern Time. And before we jump into that, I want to just tell you all to please go and find Jennie at what's the name of your website, Jennie?
It is hiddenpathastrology.com. And you are
hiddenpathastrology.com. And you can find me at astrolore.org. So before you do anything else, please like this video, share it, subscribe to our channel. And now we're ready to talk about the Libra full moon. So, when we're looking at the phases of the moon, most of you who are watching this are probably fairly familiar with how that process works. Every approximately 28 days, we start a new cycle of the moon with the new moon. 2 weeks after the new moon, we come to the full moon. We can look at these, there's 8 phases to each moon cycle. What we mostly focus on in our conversation here is really looking at the new moon, which is the start of the cycle. You can relate that to the planting of a seed, the beginning of something new. A week later, we come to the first quarter phase of the moon, which is really time to take action on what you want to be developing in the phase. And then a week after that, we come to the full moon. And that's the illumination, the celebration, and a time to make adjustments if you see what needs to be adjusted at that point. A week after the full moon, we come to the last quarter phase, which is kind of another time of adjustment as we prepare for the full breakdown of the cycle, where we will come to another new moon a week after that. So it's a very simple little 28-day cycle. And now here we are. We're at the full moon. So we're going to see the illumination of what we began at the new moon, which was on April 1st. That was the Aries New Moon, the first new moon of the spring season.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So that kind of lays out that pathway.
Mm-hmm. And also, what we often talk about is that you can use the longer cycle, which to some of us, it might be more meaningful to think in longer cycle. And the longer cycle would have started roughly 6 months ago with the Libra New Moon on October 6th in 2021. And that's a way you can kind of extend it out and think about bigger projects and think about what's coming to light from the seed you planted back in October. And the other thing to think about is that if any of these things hit a sensitive point in your personal horoscope or natal chart, that this one might be particularly important to you, or maybe less important, and a different one is more important. So it is really helpful to know your own stuff so you can kind of figure out, is this one I should really tune into because it's falling right on my ascendant or my moon or something like that. So that's the other piece, just to kind of add to the mix. So. Yeah.
And what degree does this Libra full moon fall at? Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah, it's 26 degrees because we're at the very end. We're getting to the end of the Aries season. We're getting ready for the sun to shift into Taurus, which we will also be doing a video about. But this is the late Libra full moon, like 26 degrees. So
26 degrees of Libra. So the sun is at 26 degrees of Aries. The moon is in the exact opposite position. That's why it has such a full reflection of the whole moon. Okay.
That's right.
So you want to take a look at that chart?
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Libra too, as I pull this up. So we're in Aries season, which is that, kind of fierce, furious time of year. It's spring in the Northern Hemisphere. It's autumn in the Southern Hemisphere. And Libra is going to be dramatically opposite of all of the things that Aries represents. So Libra is an air sign. It's much more about balance and cooperation. It might be about things like mediation or diplomacy. It's the kind of intellectual portion of relationships, like where you're looking for balance and some kind of equality in relationships. So where Aries is very much concerned about me and mine and myself, Libra is by definition always thinking about the other person, sometimes to a fault. So it's the polar opposite.
Yeah. Self and other. Yeah. Aries is very much about the self, and Libra is about bringing in the other, the balance.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about that just in terms of, you know, if you think about the new moon as the time to plant the seed, you're planting kind of a selfish, self-determined seed that now is illuminating the ability to be in relationship. That's kind of an interesting to
Yeah.
think about that. Well, you have to, I mean, you think about that just in very simply, you have to pay attention to yourself in order to be in relationship. You can't give it all away. So it's that
Hmm.
balancing those two.
Yeah, and there's something to be said too for thinking about that you have a relationship to yourself. And when you're thinking about Aries, you're thinking about what is that relationship to yourself and where do you need to be bold and brave and courageous in and of yourself. Whereas when you bring in Libra, now there's sort of these themes about in relationship of being sort of autonomous in your relationships and balancing that with cooperation. The other thing I always think about with Aries and Libra is that whole concept in psychology of mirroring, where you're kind of mirroring other people, like you're doing you and your process, and you're in a relationship with everyone else around you, and you're kind of mirroring each other, like what kinds of different components there are to each of you individually. So there's the whole thing about that too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So with this new moon, yeah, full moon rather, what is happening in, well, let's think about it. Let's think about the new moon was when the moon was up here with the sun.
Hmm.
And where has it traveled? What has it done in the course of the last 2 weeks? That's one
Hmm.
thing to look at. Uh,
Yeah,
so it's the moon was here with the sun
right
and it
here.
started traveling in this direction.
Hmm.
So Mercury was not in the picture at that time. Mercury was back here. Um, well, actually,
Mercury was at, yeah, 9 Aries, and the Aries new moon was at 11.
okay.
So, yeah.
So what the moon actually passed through was it passed over Chiron, over Uranus, and over the North Node. And then it was just free sailing through this empty part of the zodiac
Yeah.
until it
Hmm.
came to this full position.
Hmm.
So how do you think about that? The moon gathers up the energies of the planets as it goes around it,
Hmm.
gathers it up.
Soaks it up. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Well, I was thinking, we talked a lot in our new moon, of course, about Aries and what it means. And there's this, moon soaking up all these Aries vibes, we'll say, about autonomy and self and fearlessness and courage. And what do those things mean? And what does it mean to be brave? And what does it mean to be courageous? And then the very first thing it did was it encountered Chiron,
right,
which is
right.
really represents the wound in the culture. And I think it's pretty easy to think about what type of wound do we have around fierce action that is out of balance in our culture. So I think that's the first thing is it kind of went to this, hey, what's the wound happening here? Um, and then,
Yeah, I just
yeah,
guns there.
yeah, there's so much we could talk about in that. Just that, from my point of view, I always just think about this, just that energy is really out of balance where there's too much active energy and there isn't enough introspection or reflection. And it's more of the kind of inward facing energy. So there's probably many different ways we each could see that. I was thinking about, can you think of examples of men yelling on stage in that time period? So there's that.
Oh my God, there's
Um,
so much with, yeah,
right.
Aries, the negative side of Aries, the whole war
Yeah.
views and masculine.
There's
Um,
many examples of it. And yeah, and then it went to Uranus. What happens with a moon Uranus contact, Lori?
yeah, it's like
Mm,
wake
mhm,
up to, and Uranus is in Taurus. So it's a real wake up to the earth. Taurus, I think of Taurus as the earth, as women. It's ruled by Venus. So it's a
mhm,
very more feminine energy. And it's like, yeah, bringing that, the awakening of Uranus to the conversation.
Hmm. Yeah, and also just some of the things that we've talked about on and off, like just how supply chains and food chains have been kind of rippling, and there's different things happening, and it's very unpredictable. That is another sign of Uranus and Taurus, and the moon kind of picking up some of those significations or shining a light on those significations.
And the money
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah, and the
Money stuff.
fluctuations. Yep.
Not, and the,
Hmm.
Bitcoin thing, that's that every time I hear any of these conversations about Bitcoin, it's like, oh, well, yeah, we knew when Uranus moved into Taurus, oh, money is going to be something on the table in a big changing pattern, and food supplies and all of that. And so when, the moon going over that just re-enlightens that, or reinvigorates that conversation, or those particular issues.
Hmm. Yeah, it sure does. Yeah.
So what
So.
about going over the North Node? What would you think of with that?
Well, it's interesting. It's always interesting talking about the nodal axis because there's so many different interpretations and
Yeah.
viewpoints and so on and so forth. And we'd probably all come up with a little bit of our own. But I like to think of it in a simple way as sort of like the tip of the arrow of the direction of all things. That the North Node is the tip. And so, what would it be in Taurus? It's about stabilizing these things, about getting in tune with, like, reaching really high to I always think about being better stewards of the earth, because we're totally opposite from that. We're destroying many things and many of our own systems. So the reach is all about what things can we do to bring more peace and reverence to really to the natural world, is a thing to think about. So I mean, in a personal life, in an individual life, that might be you personally connecting with nature more, and on the much bigger scale, it's about our whole system needing to adjust, and switch into a much more mindful space.
Yeah,
Oh.
around, particularly around those issues of money, women, food, those Taurus kind of issues. And one of my favorite
Mhm,
words for Taurus is reverence. I'm really glad you said that, because,
mhm,
yeah, it's like moving in the direction of finding a space within us of reverence for what sustains us,
mhm,
those things that sustain us. Yeah, that's
mhm.
that's interesting.
Yeah. So that, and we'll talk more about the Taurus energy in our Sun into Taurus episode. So, yeah, we'll get
Yeah,
more into that. Yeah.
I want to kind of make I want to pause here for a minute and
Mhm,
just make an announcement that one thing that Jenny and I are planning on doing is, rather than just doing a Sun into Taurus episode, an ingress, we're going to really talk about the period of time when the Sun is passing through Taurus. So that's
mhm,
going to bring in a lot more conversation about all the things that are
mhm.
happening in the course of the month.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be cool.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be fun.
yeah. So after it passed through all those Taurus things, then it was kind of free sailing all the way to Libra, which, I mean, the common ground here is that Taurus and Libra are both ruled by Venus. So we've gone from all of that conversation we just had about Taurus, a Venus ruled sign, and now the moon is back in a Venus ruled sign. And at this point, Venus is in Pisces, which is quite a nice place for it to be. And it's coming up on it's heading its way towards Neptune and towards Jupiter, to conjunctions with those planets. So we have a lot of, um, I don't know, I just think of that Pisces energy of just
Ooh,
being
we
kind
got
of
a lot of
free
Pisces
flowing. And
going
yeah,
on.
there's a lot of Pisces going
Yeah.
on here. And we've had a lot of conversation of Pisces, like the really dreamy, ethereal, imaginative parts of Pisces over the last couple months. So yeah.
Yeah. And when Venus moved in there, it just activated it even more. But with Mars in there now, it's like a little edge to it all of a sudden. This little spot I've been thinking of for so long, where it's like we've all got this sweet spot. But then Mars moves in, it's like there's an edge there. It's not quite as simple and sweet as we were kind of putting it up on a pedestal of.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a preview for Saturn going into Pisces. down the road. So it's a little bit of a sneak preview of like it's that Pisces place has been a real sweet spot, as you say, Lori. And
Ugh.
then it's gonna get shaken up. And we'll be talking about, what are some of the things that we're being, I don't know, being brought into focus with that, I guess is what I'll say. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's interesting for sure.
hmm What
Okay.
else do we see with this? What do we see with the full moon?
Well, let me put up.
Hmm.
Let's take a look here. The big one is that it is very closely squared by Pluto.
hmm Pluto's bringing in that transformative element, that like deep
Oh,
breakdown of systems to change things over, to clear the way for new things, or empowerment is our key word. I know we like to use a lot for Pluto.
yeah.
It's
Power,
necessary.
destruction, empowerment. Yeah,
Mhm.
all the symbols have the more positive and the more challenging side to them. And, Pluto's job is to destroy what is in the way of necessary transformation. And on the other
Yeah,
side of that necessary transformation is empowerment.
yeah.
But it doesn't come without the work and the effort.
hmm
Uh,
And in Capricorn, it brings in a lot of other things too. I mean, in Capricorn, we're looking at a system that has been in place for thousands of years in the Western culture, the patriarchal system. And Pluto is sort of bringing all the things to the surface that don't work about this system. And it works for a little percentage of people, but there's a lot of people this system doesn't work for. And that's part of the reason we're seeing so much unrest, because it's kind of bubbling up to the surface, which is sort of what Pluto does. It helps excavate the stuff that's underlying and brings them up into the light where we're forced to confront some of these issues. They can't hide in the same way. And so that's some of the signification of Pluto. Oh,
Yeah, so this full moon is really, there's a lot of power in it. And
hmm
if like we said earlier, if you have planets very close to the sun or the moon, you're going to be feeling this a lot, and you're going to be feeling that power dynamic.
hmm And
Uh,
maybe stuff bubbling up, things that you're like, oh, I thought I was done with that, but nope, it wasn't finished if it's come back up.
and with an
Yeah.
opposition, it's because the opposition really brings in, and Libra, relationships. So what those power dynamics could come in very easily um, through personal relationships.
Yeah, and really just thinking about the balance of the, quality or a lack of equality in whatever your relationships, or the harmony or lack of harmony, or the cooperation or the lack of cooperation. So those are things that may be popping up, especially, if you think back to that 6-month time frame since October, what has been going on in your personal relationships in that time? It's a good thing to think about, or
Yeah,
a tough thing to think
yeah.
about.
It's interesting
Mhm,
too, because the sun in Aries ruled by Mars, the moon in Libra ruled by Venus, and they
mhm,
have been doing such a dance
mhm.
for quite a while they were, moving through Aquarius. There was quite a little dance going on. Venus at this point has pulled away, but now they're co-present in Pisces.
Mhm.
Yeah, relationships
Yeah.
are a very significant place where a lot of stuff is playing out right now.
Yeah, I mean, on the bigger level too, it's like I think that like some of the issues that are happening for trans people right now could be signified by this struggle, this clear struggle between what our society would like to label masculine and feminine, and what are those traits, and what belongs to who, and just having this weird viewpoint about, well, about that it
Yeah, I
somehow
mean, so
belongs.
much
But
of this
mhm,
conflict right now
mhm,
plays into these issues,
yeah,
abortion rights,
hmm
trans rights, all that stuff. It's all the masculine and the feminine kind of in this very uncomfortable
hmm
dance.
the battle for control. I mean, that's what this T square could, symbolize on the bigger scale.
Oh,
So, yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot going on there.
yeah, there's a lot going on.
Okay.
So the other things that are going on that are a little more pleasant here
Softer.
to let's see, is that the sun.
Yes.
Oh, Saturn. Saturn is sextiling the sun and trining the moon. And so is Mars.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So Mars and Saturn have pulled away from each other, but they're still both in orb of that opposition in a positive way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in Hellenistic astrology, you were thinking about Mars as being the lesser malefic, Saturn being the greater malefic. In other words, the two planets that are sort of responsible for, in that manner of thinking, for kind of creating more havoc. But when you see them when they're not in square or opposition, and they're in this like sextile or trine, you can look at them as more of interesting supports to what's happening.
Yeah.
And kind of see them as how they help bring about the things that are happening for the sun and the moon.
Yeah, and Saturn, by ancient rulership, is in its rulership in Aquarius there. So it's really supporting. It's supporting the conversation. It's supporting, it's kind of staying in the conversation and doing the work necessary. And Mars bringing the energy to do so.
Yeah.
Pisces, I don't know what kind of energy. I have a hard time thinking about Mars in Pisces.
I mean, I think, in its more negative manifestation, Mars does not want to be in Pisces. It's fighting it. It's like, get me out of this ethereal water sign, like where I can do some action. But if you take it to a more awakened state, and if you say Mars, then it can do spiritual action. It's the sign of the spiritual warrior, so it just kind of depends. And in this, because it's in a sextile to the sun and a trine to the moon, you can take the more favorable manifestation and think about how that might work. I mean, you can certainly look at it both ways, but just thinking about this is granting the effort, as you said, the action and the ability to go ahead and take the action that Libra moon is asking you to do, to bring more balance.
And with it being in Pisces, it might not look like what the sun in Aries wants action to look like.
Right. You
But
got it.
I mean, it might mean taking the action of sitting down and writing a poem, or meditating or whatever. But it's action looks different in Pisces than it does in Aries. That's for sure.
And then I like to think the Saturn in Aquarius, that's such a nice, as soon as I kind of realized that, it's like, what a nice support for the moon in Libra. That's sort of saying, hey, if you can work on your personal issues in your relationship, then you're actually contributing to this future humanitarian, like, this more humanitarian future where it's more balanced, and there's more of a conversation about these issues in relationship rather than there being a fight. It's a little bit more of a discussion or a dialogue. I really like how that brings that in. It kind of stabilizes the ability to talk about whatever the intense issue is.
Yeah. I really like the setup. I like that Pluto's in there because it's appropriate for Pluto to be in there. We need so much to be excavating some of that dark matter that's under the surface. And having both Mars and Saturn really supporting the conversation seems like a great thing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's good.
Awesome.
All right. Okay.
So you want to think about the individual impacts very briefly?
Yeah, let's run through that. So I'll stop sharing here.
Okay. And I think I can open this. Yes, I got the right one. Okay.
Nice. Well done.
Here, if you've got Aries Rising, the Libra Moon is going to be in your 7th house, the sun in your 1st house. So basically, I'm going to keep things so simple here. It's ridiculous, but I just want to say this is a time to celebrate your relationships. Right?
Nice. I like that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you're really living that idea of the autonomy of yourself and then in relationship with others when you have Aries rising with this full moon.
Right. Yeah. So anything else to say about that? I mean, that seems awfully simplistic, but that's really.
Just, yeah, bring the balance, the cooperation. I mean, maybe this is a time where you do some simple tasks with your partner, whether that's your business partner, your intimate partner, or the person you happen to be hanging out with that afternoon. This is a great time for nice conversation and maybe do something together.
Yeah.
I think it is that simple.
Yeah, I think it is that simple
Yeah.
too. Okay, so if you have Taurus rising, the full moon is going to be here in your 6th house.
Yeah.
So you're really looking at issues of your day-to-day routines, of self-care, and how you understand the work you're doing on a day-to-day level of your self-care, and how that comes from your individual, very individual, strong opinions within your, within your mind.
Yeah. Or I think, yeah, this is a time to really just take a look at your routines and think about how they support your health, and just, take it with a grain of salt. Like, give yourself some space to really think about it, and then make your plan and do it, because this is about your health. And this might be, going to your doctor for a checkup. This could be overhauling your fitness routine. This could be getting a little bit more space around whatever's been bugging you at work, in your day-to-day work life, and just make that happen. Find some more harmony in that
Yeah,
routine.
and I'm thinking, if the new moon happened in the 12th house and you planted some seed to develop a stronger understanding of your own unconscious, and now this comes along, it's like, okay, so you planted that seed, but now take action on it in a physical way.
Yep.
Now kind of,
Yeah.
adjusting in a more physical manner.
Yeah, and also too, like, the moon. Another thing, way you think about the moon too, is it does represent the body. So this is a good place to. I mean, it's the emotions, but guess what? Our emotions live in our body, and so when you look at ancient astrology, that really talks about the moon as the body. It really correlates, because that's what that's what's kind of what's happening. So this is a really good time to pay attention to how emotional stress is affecting you, and to balance that out. So.
Yeah, that's good. Emotion. Yeah. Okay, good. So now if you have Gemini rising, the moon is falling in your 5th house. So what are we celebrating? We're celebrating creativity. We're celebrating how we give love.
That's right. Maybe this is a time to evaluate the kind of risks you want to take, because we're going to be taking risks in this area of life, because it's where we give love. And wherever there's love, there's always maybe some feeling of risk, because you're exposing vulnerability. You're being vulnerable with somebody. When you truly love and give unconditional love, you are also recognizing that this can be fleeting. Life can be short. Things go quickly. So you're taking a risk by
And
doing
it's
that.
not just, it's not just how you give love to another individual. It also, always remember with that 5th house, the creative aspect, the creativity involved. And with the opposition here, it's like how your creativity is supporting your ability, how your giving of yourself is supporting your ability to receive as well.
Yeah, I like how you always bring that into the conversation, Laurie. And like, you're thinking about, if you've got Aries up there in the 11th house, that means you might show up as a fairly autonomous, freestanding person up in front of your groups. But the reality is, it's a two-way street, and they support you, you support them. That's how it works.
Yeah. Okay, so now if you have Cancer rising, the full moon's falling in your 4th house, which is about home and family. What are you celebrating here in terms of creating a diplomatic space in your home and family?
Yeah, this is like within your family, the role you are in your family, like how you take care of it, how you take care of your family. And then also, like you said, your home. So this can be your physical home. So there might be something coming to light about that. You can include home renovation or things like that, or like you just said, creating a separate space in your house for something that you need, like a meditation practice or something like that. But it also could be tied in with your lineage. So I always like thinking about your ancestors with this house as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, your ancestors, or, with the sun up here in the 10th, how is your career? Are there changes in your career that are really supporting or necessitating changes in your home environment?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that probably about covers it, huh?
I think that about covers it. Okay, let's go
Yeah.
on to, if you've got Leo rising, this is happening. The full moon itself is in your third house. What do you need to be saying? The third house is really about our communications, our day-to-day way of thinking, and people we communicate with on a day-to-day level, our neighbors, the person at the post office, those type of situations. So there's some, maybe
Yeah.
it's time to start writing your book.
Yeah. I mean, this can
Communication
be,
really,
oh, sorry, Lori.
no,
Mhm.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, this can be all different kinds of intellectual pursuits too. This is how you verbalize. This is also how you think, how you learn, and just kind of all things information. So yeah, absolutely a time to potentially write that book if that's what you're doing, or it might be time with the sun and Aries in the ninth house. You're going to be showing up as in this more pioneering or warrior archetype up there with your worldview.
Right.
So that
How
third
you
house
use how you
is
use your voice from
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Those big, strong Aries opinions of your worldview, and how you bring that into a diplomatic conversation.
Yeah, you make it more palatable and accessible to people. So yeah, that's great. Nice.
Okay, so that's Leo rising. Now let's go on to a Virgo rising. This is
Mhm.
in your second house. Huh. Okay. So this brings in the awareness of finances or your own self-worth, possibly how your own self-worth is attached to finances, something in that realm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And so I also think about the second house as resources as well. So when you have Libra in your second house of resources, this means that you have the capacity to really develop an attitude of equanimity, meaning that you can find an even keel and not get overly worked up and stressed about money. Like you have that possibility as a resource, which is really nice because most of us get extraordinarily worked up about money because how can we not?
We
So
need
I,
to learn stuff.
yeah, exactly. So this is a time just to think about that.
And with, the opposition from the
Mm,
eighth house, you're thinking about it as personal resources in the second and
yeah.
shared resources in the eighth. How are you allowing yourself to be supported by others,
Hmm.
possibly, and how that is impacting your own self-valuing?
Hmm.
There's
Yeah.
something interesting in that for sure. Okay.
Yeah. That's pretty good. So, okay.
I like that. Okay. Now, next we're going to Libra, and that full moon is happening in your first house. It is very personal. How are you showing up as an individual who is being diplomatic, even in the face of aggravation in relationship?
Yeah. This
Or
is, I always find Libra rising is such an interesting thing because it's like you get this kind of, oh, like Libra, it's like all about Venus and beauty and harmony and all these things. Yet that person's always going to have Aries on the seventh house. So this could be a person that has a struggle in relationships because they want to do it their own way and they want to have it be their own thing. Or they may attract a partner who's pretty fierce and intense because they're trying to learn that lesson of having more autonomy. They're trying to learn how to take more of a stance. At any rate, it's always going to be about balance. And with a full moon and Libra falling in your first house, it could bring things to light. One of those things it can bring to light might be a blind spot that you've had before. And suddenly you have this doorway in to notice, wow, maybe I haven't been so great in my relationship for the last couple weeks. And it's time to rebalance that.
Well, Libra is such an interesting sign, and it's such an interesting time. It's a sign, it's a cardinal sign, and yet because it's ruled by Libra, we think it's just all pretty and all of that, but it is a strong sign as a cardinal sign. It is very and it's also, it's an air sign, so it's about the intellect. It's not like Taurus, which is also the other Venus, but it's the earth sign. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I like, bringing up the fact that it's cardinal. Sometimes you might think, well, how can Libra be cardinal? It seems sort of passive and indecisive and so on, but it's really responsible for the initiation of relationships. I mean, really, that's what is happening here. And, think about your relationships and which ones you started and which one, it's an interesting balance. Some
Yeah.
you participate more in, some the other person participates more in. So,
Yeah, Libra is an interesting sign indeed. I
mhm.
think, yeah, it's an interesting one. Okay, so Scorpio rising, this puts the moon in your 12th house. The awareness is somewhere in your unconscious thinking, some door opening in the back of your brain to let in some light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that Aries sun shining light in your sixth house of routines and your practices and your day to day, and then the moon's over there in this much less tangible place, which is sort of like, what are your not really your beliefs, but like your spirituality altogether behind all of that? Like, what light is being shown on that part of your life? And maybe that manifests as some sort of selfless service or some way that you're um, actually take action on something compassionate that helps other people. I mean, I always kind of think about that with the 6th and 12th house axis.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Anything else, or should I move on?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. Sagittarius rising. This falls in the 11th house, which is really the house of where we receive from our communities.
Hmm.
So this is waking up and an awareness in that area. And again, it's that polarity from where you give love to where you receive love.
Hmm. Yeah, and with Sagittarius rising, you have the ability to really provide a lot of cooperative effort to groups. Like, you might be that steady hand that kind of keeps things calm and keeps everybody participating, and just appeal to that more kind of balanced state for people. So with the full moon here, that those are things you can think about. How are you functioning in groups? What's going on in your local community? Um, where are you at with that?
Yeah. What do you need to open up more in that area?
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So then if you've got Capricorn rising, this is happening in your 10th house. So you've got Libra in your 10th house. Your whole way you are in the world in terms of career or reputation is going to be, you're kind of seen as the diplomat in that area. So you want to really take that role on and work with that.
Hmm.
The focus is on the outer world.
Yeah, and this is always an interesting one to me because it kind of means that you're like this, you've got this like, fieriness in your home life, but then you're like, oh, egalitarian and peaceful in your work life, and just what a different persona you might have. But you have to think about how the two relate to each other. How does your private life relate to your public life? And in public, you have this much more Libran affect. And with the full moon there, it's just, what do you need to do in your workplace? What seed did you plant a couple weeks ago in your home life that's impacting your workplace now?
Yeah, very
Hmm.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. So then if you have Aquarius rising, it's happening in your 9th house. So this is bringing the attention to your worldview and how you really understand the greater world, other cultures. And with Libra there's a lot of balance there.
Hmm.
Really, that's the place that is being highlighted here,
Hmm.
from
Yeah.
communication to your understanding.
Yeah. And I mean, with Aquarius rising too, you've got a pretty good air focus going on. So this is the intellect, this is studies, and this is accessing information through your mind, rather than through other means, other, let's say, more intuitive means. This is like get to work and study, open the book. That's kind of some of the things that we're going to be looking at here, that really intellectual focus.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So then if you've got Pisces, we're down to the last one
Oh,
here.
yeah.
So that the moon is falling there in the 8th house in Libra, the 8th house really being other people's values or other people's resources. So this is bringing some attention to the relationship between your own resources and other people's.
hmm Yeah, and moon work in this area of life might be just having to get clear, using your discerning mind to draw boundaries with other people and find balance in that area of life. 'Cause this can be just such an intense area. I mean, this is a place where there might be secrets, where there's stuff hidden behind the scenes a little bit. Not in the same way as the 12th house, but just sort of a little more skeleton in the closet type of thing here. So you may use your powers of discernment and be able to make some kind of peace with some issues that you uncover and other people's stuff.
That's
So,
great. And I love how you always bring in the issue of boundaries with the
mhm,
8th house. And I think that's so important. So that's an important thing to be looking at this
mhm,
point. Yeah. What is that space between your own values and the people that you're dealing with at this point in time?
mhm,
And the idea of rituals being a way to work with developing those boundaries.
mhm.
That's great. All
Yeah.
right.
All right.
I think we
We
did
did
it.
it.
I think we did it. So I guess we're gonna close off now, and we'll
Mhm.
make a video for the Taurus season. We'll be doing
Mhm.
that within the week.
That's
And
right.
thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Lori. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.